Do you have a ton of those little odds and ends of yarn, some that are long enough where you think maybe I could do something with this, and others that are just like these little tiny remnants, but you thought maybe I'll save them for some other time, some other project, maybe I can find a use for them? I have a ton of that, especially sock weight yarn. And there's a lot of great ideas for what are called scrappy projects, but I thought of a great one inspired by Claude from Retro Claude, and that is the hexipuff quilt. A while back now, I made a ridiculous number of pairs of socks on my CSM, and it used up almost all of my balls of sock weight yarn. And when I unwind my sweaters, I tend to have a lot of those scraps left over, the fuzzy little scraps, and I didn't want to throw them away. So my idea is that I'm going to knit a hexipuff blanket. I think it's called the Beekeeper's quilt. I have the pattern for it. And the puffs will be made out of the odds and ends of sock weight yarn that I have. And the stuffing will be all of those little bits that just aren't big enough to really knit anything with, but just seemed too nice to throw away. Claude is hand knitting all of her puffs. I don't know that I have the patience for that. I'm gonna be 100% honest. But Claude did mention that she figured out that one of the puffs is just basically the heel and the toe of a sock done immediately after one another, which gave me a bit of an idea. Why don't I use my circular sock machine? If you don't know what a circular sock machine is or a CSM is, I will link a few videos up above one of these places or down below. I've done a few videos on it before. This is a true antique. In the past, I have used a 3D printed one, which also works wonderfully. My idea is if I can learn how to make a hexipuff on the CSM, then that'll be a really efficient way for me to be able to knit some of these hexagons for my beekeeper's quilt. Before I use my scraps, I think I need to learn how to make one of the puffs. And as I was at Rhinebeck, I saw this bit of sock yarn. First things first though, I need to get this in a format that I can use on my sock machine because it won't knit up nicely from this. I need a nice even tension, which means that I need to make a cone that looks like this. This lovely antique machine actually came with a swift and winder, so I am going to go ahead and use that to create my cone. Oh, before we begin, can I just say one of the reasons I ended up getting this one is because it came with its original box. And what I thought was really fun is if you look on the inside of this box, you can see that they reused the wood from other boxes. That one I don't know what it's from, but it has other writing on it. But this side, if you look closely, is a reused bottle of Scotch whiskey. I do personally like Scotch, so this is why. I love it. Okay, back to winding a cone. You might have noticed that things look a little bit different. Yes, I am at my parents' house, so things in the back might look a little different, and it's why I don't currently have access to some of the scrap I've collected. But I have been knitting socks on this machine, which means that I do have also some scraps left over that I can work on. This is a 60 needle cylinder that I have on here now. I think I'm gonna keep it at the 60 needles. Yes, which means that I have 30 stitches for the heel and the toe. So I'm just doing some math in my head. I was testing some mock ribbing out, which means that I have every other needle out right now. So I have to put at least half of the needles back in place. And then I have to cast on. And look at this little cast on bonnet that I have. This is the one that came with the machine. It's kind of fun. So let's do that and let's see if we can get somewhere. What we have going on is some waste yarn that is hanging on the machine on the needles that I need. They are being pulled down with weights. These are the weights, again, original to the machine. How fun. We're going to start, if you know your CSM things, with a toe-up sock. Now, I've only ever knit socks from the cuff down, so this is going to be quite new for me. So we're going to do the toe shaping first, and wish me luck. It's basically short rows on the machine. So I'm going to be knitting across half of the stitches, so 30 stitches, and that'll be the top of my toe. And then as I go back and forth, I'm going to be going fewer and fewer stitches into the middle. So I'm creating like a crescent shape here on my machine. And then I'm going to be increasing and adding more and more of the needles back. If you've never seen any kind of knitting machine before, each one needle equals one stitch that I'm making. So it's not, the knitting machine doesn't knit with 2 needles, it knits with however many needles as there are stitches. That was a bit fiddly, but I just switched from the waste yarn, which won't be wasted, I will be using this in the hexipuffs in some way, to the working yarn. Now, before I forget, because I will forget, any needles that you put in the fully up position, like you see me doing up here, won't be worked. And then we are going to go ahead and do our first stitches all the way across. Oh. Oh. I don't know why it makes me nervous. 2 things that are important if you've never seen me do socks on a circular knitting machine. The beauty of a circular knitting machine is that it goes around in a circle and creates a lovely tube. As an example, this is one of those lovely tubes that I created. So, I can stick my whole hand through it. It knits circularly. But to do the heels and the toes, you need to do short row shaping by knitting back and forth. So by moving these needles up and out of the working positions, I'm doing 2 things. One, I'm only working on half the stitches, which is what is required to do the heels and toes. And the other is it allows my knitting carriage here to move left and right. If these were down, I can only knit in one direction. I can't go backwards. The machine will not let me go backwards. Now, we are going to start the heel shaping. I am following a video tutorial by Dean and Bean sock machines. They are who I got my 3D printed CSM from, and they have wonderful, wonderful knitting tutorials on how to do toe-up socks. I'm gonna look at that real quick and refresh myself on how to do this before I start knitting some more rows. Toe portion of the toe-up sock is done. And I know I keep on saying toe and heel. Honestly, the way they're done on the machine, unless you're doing like a deep heel or something like that, is 100% the same. So now I'm going directly into the heel. It would just be me repeating this exact same things. But for those of you who've maybe not seen this before, if you want to know what it looks like right now on the machine, let me show you what the toe pocket looks like. Okay, so we have waste yarn on this side. That's not really all that important for what we're doing. What was important is this toe pocket in here. As you can see from the short rows that we did, we're getting this shaping happening here, which is exactly what we want for the hexagon. It's a pretty deep toe. I think I have quite loose tension. I don't know, look at this fabric. Look how see-through it is. I'm a little worried that when I stuff it, it's going to be very see-through. But we'll try it and we'll take it off and we'll take a look. So I'll do everything I just did again. It's off the machine. Let's take a look. Oop. So from this side, you can kind of see if I'm holding up this way, it's a heel and a toe with a very short sock. But let's see if I can hold it up so it looks like a hexagon. And then all I have to do is sew up that side with a Kitchener stitch after stuffing it. Okay, but yeah, the only thing is this hexipuff looks quite large and it's really see-through. So if I stuffed it with anything, see, it's hard to tell, but the tension seems really loose. So let me measure this. I just looked at the pattern and it's supposed to be 3 inches point to point, and mine, this is what they mean. Sorry, I'm using a ruler on my phone. Is it this? I'm not sure what they mean point to point, but whatever point I choose, I'm at a minimum of 5 inches. This is way too big. I have a few options. I can either go down on tension, down on needles, or both. What I probably should have done before just hopping straight into making a trial hexipuff is making a tension swatch, but I was too excited to try this idea out. Okay, but we have proof of concept. Next thing on the list is to do a gauge swatch. We should have started with that, but it's okay, we're doing it now. I already unraveled the gauge swatch back onto the thingy bobbin. But I have the right tension now. The other thing I noted in the pattern is that it is a 20 stitch heel and toe, and I was doing a 30 stitch. So that will also help. So let's do it again. This time with my new tension and with 20 stitches rather than 30. And let's see what our dimensions are now. With the new tension and the 20 stitches as stated in the pattern, here is the new hexipuff. How cute is that? It's perfect. I measured it. It is exactly the 3 inches that it should be, so it's exactly the right size. Looking at the hexipuff that I knit, I am less than halfway done with that yarn, so I think I can make 2 hexipuffs of this size from that one. It is the end of my day, so there's dinner being made in the background, which you might hear. So I'm gonna go ahead and sign off for today and continue working on the hexipuffs tomorrow, and I can show you where we get with that and how exactly I'm going to go from this kind of mess in the back to a sewn up hexipuff fully. Let's keep knitting at it tomorrow. Watching me do is Kitchener stitch the hexipuff opening together only part of the way in order to leave an opening on the right side so that I can stuff the hexipuff. I don't think this is the way that I'll be finishing them in future, but I do think that it turned out really, really nicely. The poofiness is perfect. The Kitchener stitch looks good all the way up until the end. I did a little bit wrong there, but overall I'm really happy with how the hexipuff turned out, and I think we've proven that you can make hexipuffs on the CSM. The next thing that I want to do is just see how long it takes me to make a hexipuff on the CSM, so I'll time myself making 2. About 20 minutes, and I knit 2 hexipuffs, including the setup. So the setup takes some time. So the hexipuffs, I guess each one is a little less than 10 minutes. The second one, I think there's a little bit of a hiccup with the pattern there. I got a little distracted, but I think it'll be fine once I take it off the machine. But as I was thinking about it, I was like, is there a way that I can tell how much time I'm actually saving? And this isn't all about time saving, it's just kind of about doing what's fun, and this is fun to me to do it on the CSM, but it's also a way that makes it seem a little less overwhelming. Thinking about knitting all those hexipuffs by hand is overwhelming, but I'm just curious how long it would take me versus doing it on the machine. Keeping in mind that there's 2 separate finishing methods that also take different amounts of time to finish between the 3 needle bind off and the Kitchener stitch, I'm gonna go take this and a set of comparable needles so I can get the same gauge and knit some hexipuffs. The first one is probably going to take me the longest, so I'll do at least 2 and I'll time myself and I'll let you know how long it takes me in comparison. So this was my first hand knit practice hexipuff versus my first real machine knit hexipuff. I feel like you can tell that the hand knit one has sharper corners and more defined edges, but I'm honestly happy with both. And you probably saw from the time comparison that...
Also, please don't mind that I have food stuck in my teeth for the entire rest of this video. I'm so sorry. I didn't realize until watching it back just now.
I didn't look at it yet, but there's probably the CSM is a bit quicker. And I think it's more of just a matter of what's more enjoyable and what's more feasible. So trying to think about doing the hundreds of hexipuffs needed for the blanket of the size that I want is just so overwhelming that I know I'm not going to do it. But I have fun using my CSM. I am not tiring out my arms or my hands in the same way that I do when I knit. And it doesn't mean that I can't hand knit a few of them. I'm probably going to hand knit quite a few of these as well. Right now, I have 1 hexipuff on my needles that I need to stuff and finish. I have 2 on my machine here, and I need to finish out the rest of this spool. And then I have a lot of other odds and ends that I want to make hexipuffs out of, and I'm just really, really glad that we did this over the last few days because it proved that it's possible to do it on the CSM. Like, this is going to be a great project for me to tackle my scrap yarn stash. And you know what I think is going to be really fun about this is this could be a blanket that's like never done. So the moment that I have scraps that come up that are appropriate for another hexipuff, I can make another one and add it to my blanket. So it's one that can just grow with me and my knitting and the yarns that I use. I am very excited to continue on it. Let me know if you want to see when I've done a lot more of these hexipuffs and start sewing it together in the blanket. If you want to see that progress, just let me know. It can be done with a CSM. If you have one, maybe this is a different idea of how to use one. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoy videos about crafting, especially vintage and historical knitting and crocheting, maybe some lace making, feel free to subscribe because that is a lot of what I do here and I really enjoy sharing it with you all. Thank you again for watching and I'll see you next time. Bye.